Hi guys, Tara here. Welcome to another Crafting with Curlicues video. Today I am inspired by the Lawnscaping Challenge and I'm going to do some texture on a fun Zig clean color background. I'm using this adorable Booyah stamp set by Lawn Fawn, so it's got all these cute little ghosty silhouettes and then costumes you can dress them up in. I don't know about you guys, but I am stoked that Halloween is coming up here next month. Fall is my absolute favorite, so I'm really excited. Lots of people are like, calm down, it's not time yet, but I think it's time. So anyway, you can see I stamped my little ghost friend once and I put her hat like way too on the tippy top of her head. It looked silly. So I'm restamping her and I'm just using my Ranger Archival ink because I am going to be using my Zig clean color water brush pens to color this ghost in. And I stamped the hat first and then I used a simple post-it note to create a little mask so that I could mask off that hat and stamp the ghost body right in front of it and make it one image. So there's 3 different smiley faces you can put on the ghost that come with this stamp set. So I gave her the cute little lashes set because we're going to use a really fun sentiment later that she definitely needs to be a little girl witch. So I also stamped the broom so that she has an accessory there. And now I am just going to color this little ghost in with some really simple Zig clean color real brush marker coloring. So I've just got a really light gray shade here, and so for the ghost body, I want her to basically be white, but I want her to have some dimension also, so I'm just shading the side in, and then I'm taking my water brush, and I am just blending that gray out so that you don't see that harsh line, and now she's got just the tiniest bit of shading up underneath the hat and on that side of her body, so that she's not just a flat white. And now I'm going to take a black marker as well as a dark gray and I'm going to color in her hat. So I am just basically kind of shading one side darker and then blending out into the lighter on the other side. I really love using these markers with no additional water. They blend together so beautifully that you don't even need to bring water in. I mean, I do when I want to like blend out into white or I want an even smoother blend, but you really don't have to do anything fancy with these. I did stamp this on some watercolor cardstock. I used Canson XL Cold Press watercolor cardstock, and I will link to all of the supplies that I'm using over on my blog. So if you're interested in any of that, you can check that out over there. For the little brim on her hat, I am using a couple different shades of purple. So I have like a really deep royal purple and then this kind of raspberry-ish purple color. And that's going to kind of be the color scheme of my whole card. It's just really simple coloring. Really, this card is pretty basic. I was inspired by the Lawnscaping Challenge that's going on right now, which is all about texture. So I decided to get out some of my embossing paste that I have and I like to play with, but I hadn't used it in a while. So I decided to do that with this card. So really the coloring and the elements, the stamped elements is a pretty small portion of the card, and what we're really going to focus on later is the background. So I'm now coloring in the little broom with just a couple different shades of brown, and again it's just really basic, easy coloring, minimal shading needed. And then I'm going to bust out a Sakura gold glitter pen. I've had this pen forever. I think it came with a scrapbooking kit I got when I was like in high school, which let me tell you, was a long time ago. And I don't even know where, I mean, it's lasted forever and I use it for almost every gold accent because it's got this really pretty gold shimmer. So now the little ghostie is all taken care of and I am just going to cut her out. Oh, well, first I have to put some little rosy cheeks because we all know that a ghost out on the town, she's going to have some rosy cheeks. So I used a little bit of a light pink and then I'm just using that water brush to blend the harsh edges out. So now I'm just going to cut these images out. It is a little trickier to fussy cut with the watercolor cardstock because it's so much thicker, but a basic image like this was not really a problem at all. And then I take a black brush tip marker and I just trace the edges. This really makes the fussy cut pieces look nice and clean and professional when you get done with them. It's really helpful with watercolor paper because it is so thick, you can really see that white core. So by going over the edges with the black, it just takes away any cutting boo-boos that may have happened. Not that that happens because we're all amazing and we cut perfectly the first time, but this will help it in case you have a random oopsie. So now all of that is done and I can start working on my background. Apologize for the sun on this, you guys. I live in the Pacific Northwest and the weather was going bonkers. It was super sunny one second and then overcast the next second, and I couldn't seem to make the light work for my camera. So I'm sorry about that crazy sun glare there in the corner. But anyway, so I just have another piece of watercolor cardstock cut to the size of an A2 card front, and I am just taking those couple purple colors and I'm literally just scribbling on the front of this card. So now I'm going to take some of my water and I'm just going to spritz. This is regular old water, and I just spritz that on. I just did a card, I'll link to the end of it, with a really pretty Zig clean color background, so I wanted to show you guys kind of how I accomplished that. So now I'm just kind of tilting that and letting the water run all on its own. And then I'm going to set that aside and let it dry naturally for as long as I can while I work on other elements of my card. So this is the leftover watercolor cardstock from cutting out my ghosty friend. And I'm just going to cut that off and have this little strip because this is going to peek out of my main panel. And what I'm wanting to create is kind of a strip of ombre color with these same two purple colors. So I'm kind of just scribbling on there. I'm not being careful at all because I know that I'm going to go over later and blend this out better. So I'm just getting that color down right now is what I'm really wanting to do. And then I'm going to come in once I've got enough of that color down with my water brush, and I'm just going to use the water. I'm using quite a bit of water, squeezing it out of that water brush, and I'm just blending this color out, and it goes on so smooth and it stays really vivid and dark. It's absolutely beautiful. So now that I've done that with the strip, I'm going to scribble on a separate piece of paper to get that color out of my water brush. And now I'm going to take that background, I'm going to finish drying that with my heat tool. I did let it dry for a little bit on its own, so it kind of got some nice movement there. And now I'm going to use my heat tool. You can see I'm kind of coming in at different angles and I'm pushing those water blobs around. And then I'm going to go ahead and dry from the back as well. So now I've got some natural drying as well as some spots that I made it dry with some darker color. And I really love the vivid, bright backgrounds you get with these Zig clean color markers this way. Now I'm just kind of straightening that paper out because it warped from all the wetness and the heat. And I'm taking this little geometric stencil that came in my last Simon Says Stamp card kit. And I've got my Art Co. black embossing paste and a palette knife. And I'm just kind of holding that little stencil on there and I'm rubbing that embossing paste over the top. I didn't tape this down with any Post-it tape or anything because I kind of want it to be a little bit more loose. I'm not going to fill in every single hole here. And this stencil is nice and tiny, so I can actually manage holding it with my fingers. So this one I didn't feel like I needed to tape down, although I do get a little bit of a goober off to the side that probably if I had taped it off, that wouldn't have happened. But, you know, hey, it works. So then when I go ahead and take this stencil off, you can see all that really cool black texture on top of that watercolor background that we just created. So I think that looks so cool. I'm going to set that aside and let it dry. And now I'm going to take my little strip piece and I'm going to add some texture to this piece as well. For this one, I am going to tape it down because it's a little bit warped. I'm wanting to make sure that everything's nice and dry before I put my embossing paste on the top. So I just grabbed my heat gun and hit that real quick. And I'm going to take my Post-it tape and I'm going to tape this panel to my craft mat here. And you can see I am getting my craft mat all kinds of dirty. I should really be covering these surfaces first, but frankly, I'm too lazy. So if you want to take better care of your craft mat, don't follow my example. So I have this really cool Teresa Collins stencil that's an 8.5 by 11 sheet of all these different kind of patterns and shapes. And I'm using this straight line border with these diagonal stripes, and I'm going to adhere that right over the top of this colored part, and I am just going to go to town with this black embossing paste. I don't really care if it gets off the side of the stencil because I am going to be covering that up with my main panel of my card, so I'm not super concerned about it. When you're applying this embossing paste, you just want to make sure you get it in all of the holes and scrape over the top. I like to have mine smooth, so I kind of run the side of my palette knife over the top and get all the excess embossing paste off, and then you can put all of that back in the jar and save it for next time. This stuff lasts a really long time. You really don't need all that much of it. And you can see you get it pretty clean there, and then when you peel it up, you get these really crisp lines, except for I had one spot up there at the top where my stencil shifted and the embossing paste got underneath one of the little lines, but that's okay. I'm just going to let it be. So now while that dries, I'm going to go ahead and prep my sentiment. This is just a scrap of Simon Says stamp black cardstock from a different project. And I am taking the awesome sentiment from that Booyah stamp set that says, "Hey, ghoul friend." I love it. It's so funny. It's fantastic. And I'm going to emboss that with some Versamark ink and some Ranger Superfine White embossing powder on that black piece of cardstock there. So now I have this really cool sentiment that pops on the black. And I'm going to bust out my paper trimmer and I'm going to cut this sentiment all apart. So rather than cutting my stamp apart, I opted to cut the sentiment apart once it was already stamped. So I'm going to trim this down really close to those words, and then I'm going to go in between each of those words and cut the sentiment up so that I have 3 separate little word squares that I can arrange however I want on my card. So I'm just trimming off the little ends so that they're all kind of similarly spaced here. And then I'm going to take my white Uniball jelly roll pen. No, that's a different brand. My white Signo Uniball pen. I do have a jelly roll, but I'm not using it this time. And I'm going to just draw little boxes on these. I think it just gives it a little extra something when you have these little word squares. You absolutely don't have to do this step, but I decided that I wanted to this time. So you can see that those are all getting framed there, and that's going to allow me to arrange this sentiment anywhere that I want on the card without having to follow the straight line that it comes in. So I really love this sentiment. It is so stinking cute. Like, "Hey, girlfriend." It's pretty awesome. Lawn Fawn is pretty great with the puns. All of their stamp sets have adorable little puns that come with them. So I was pretty stoked to use this one. So now that my panels are getting dry here, I'm going to go ahead and trim this one down a little bit so that it can allow that corner that we created, that side strip, to peek out. So it's 4 1/4 now. I'm going to end up cutting about 1/4 inch off of each side and making it 3.75 inches by 5.5. So it's going to cover the entire card from top to bottom and then have a little bit left over on the side. So I am using a regular A2 size card base that I created with some Nina 110 pound solar white cardstock. It is a top folding card. So now I'm just going to take my ATG gun and I'm going to adhesive the heck out of this card front. You can see the shiny there. I have put so much adhesive on here because everything's kind of warpy from the embossing paste, and I just want to make sure everything sticks really well. So now I'm just going to go ahead and put that embossed stripe right on the left hand side there. And then I'm kind of pushing in between the embossed spaces to make sure that it adheres really nice and tight. Put some more adhesive on the top of the rest of that little panel that I just adhered there. And then I'm going to cut down a piece of white craft foam and adhere that to the back of my watercolor background panel. So my craft foam's kind of all messy because I put it behind my stamps sometimes and use it as a cushion when I'm stamping, but it still works to create the pop. So I decided to do this instead of some 3D foam tape just because I wanted it to have a more solid background and be a little bit more stable for going through the mail, not to mention the fact that it's got all this embossed texture on it and it's wet, so the paper was warping. So I wanted to give it as much stability as possible. So I'm going to line that panel up with the right hand side of the card base, and you can see that that stripe is sticking out just on the left hand side with the same colors as that watercolor background. I think it looks really neat. This particular embossing paste dries with a matte finish, so there's no extra like sparkle or anything detracting from all those really fun bright pops of color. So I really love the way that it turned out. So you can see here now I'm going to take my little ghosty gal and my sentiment squares, and I can just arrange her on there to kind of be the focal point. So I've got everything laid out the way that I want it on the card, and now I'm going to take this little tiny element that comes in the stamp set of this little thin piece of web here, and I'm going to stamp that so that it's going to hang out the bottom of that sentiment square there. And then there's this little itty bitty black spider that is too stinking cute, and I did have to, I apologize, take the card out of frame because I was having trouble lining that spider up with the end of that little web. But I stamped that tiny little spider at the end of that web. And then when I put the sentiment square back on, it's going to look like that spider is falling out of the sentiment, which I think is absolutely too cute. And it added a little something down in the bottom of the card since this card is kind of centered up at the top there. So I'm just using my ATG gun to adhere these elements. I don't need any 3D tape or foam tape because the embossing texture there is already kind of popping her up. So I didn't have to add any extra. I just used my Zig glue pen to go ahead and put a little bit of glue on the back of her broom and just adhere that there so she's ready to roll. And then I'm going to use my ATG gun to adhere all of the little sentiment squares and get those on there. So this card was super fun. This stamp set is adorable. I cannot wait to get going on more Halloween cards because Halloween and fall are like my complete favorite. So keep an eye out for more of that. I'm probably going to do some sort of series. And I did want to say thank you to you guys. I am almost at 200 YouTube subscribers. I am in awe. When I hit that 200, I'm going to do one heck of a giveaway. So make sure you stay tuned. Tell your friends to subscribe so I can give some stuff away. And thank you so much for joining me. Look at this finished card. So much fun with all of that extra dimension. Oh, I did go in with my black Jelly Roll pen and make some of the black things a little bit more black. So that little spider needed a little bit of pop. So I just colored it in with my black Jelly Roll pen. So now I believe... Oh, after some little white dots on the cheeks, you know, I'm a detail girl. I got to keep adding those things in. Now this card is all done. Some really fun dimension. You can kind of see here from the side what that embossing paste did for it. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Go ahead and hit subscribe. I am so close to that giveaway. Really want to give stuff out. I have all the lists of supplies over at my blog, so go ahead and visit me over there. And then here are a couple other videos that I've linked to. Another Lawn Fawn video. And then here's that other card where I use a Zig background, but I don't make it in the video. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.